Hi, what's up, everybody? So I'm here today to tell a story about or talk about shitty teachers, because we've all had one of those. We've all had a shitty teacher in the past. Maybe we've all had multiple, or well, it's not all gonna be shitty teachers. It may be some subs, or maybe like some teachers that weren't on my good side, or some that I just really disliked. And well, the first teacher I can remember, like it was at this middle school, and I remember this teacher was subbing for like our English class, and we're gonna call this teacher Miss D. And she was a fucking bitch, dude. Like no one enjoyed her, and I remember I figured that out when I realized that because there was this girl sitting on the floor, and she had like this turtleneck on, and it was a tank top, so like she had like there was nothing on her arms. You could see it's like her shoulders were exposed, but other than that, like you could see none of her body really. Like just her arms were out. Like she had a turtleneck, right? It went all the way down to like the beginning of her pant. There was no revealing, like really revealing stuff other than her arms, you might say. But it's just a shitty thing that teachers think that guys have to ejaculate all over the floor whenever they see a girl's shoulders, right? But so this girl, the teacher looks at the girl and says, "Who's that down there? Come up here." And I knew the moment that she called her name what she was going to tell her. And I remember I like eavesdropped a little bit. She's like, "Oh, that's you gotta put a shirt on." And the girl's like, "Oh, well, I think I'd just rather go to the office, which is, because like it's a pretty shitty thing to do. It's like I get dress codings and all, but sometimes they're just too harsh with it. Like, "Oh my God, shoulders, I'm coming right now." But like it's like that's just too much of a dicky thing to do. Like if you see someone's shoulders, it's just shoulders, all right. It's nothing. It's not like you're seeing their whole ass boobs or shit, dude. Like, so that's like I remember like her friends were defending her, like let her wear what she wants, and like I don't know, like I just that's the day I realized that Miss B or Miss D was a bitch. Um, and I remember this other time, I had this one substitute teacher. No, wait, what was his name? You know what? I can't remember it. Hold on. Or no, I remember in like eighth grade, the English teacher that Miss D was covering for was also kind of a bitch, here and there. I remember she was like just too serious and like strict and like sort of like wouldn't like let loose on shit. Like little shit she would just take a little too seriously, but she wasn't a terrible teacher in the end. But there were moments where she was just a little bit over the top. And I remember we'll call her Miss Z. I don't know. And Miss Z was kind of like, again, I'm not going to give out any real names. The last teacher I talked about, I did give her first get names initial because I have no respect for her whatsoever. But I'll keep the names hidden. So Mrs. Z here, she's like an old teacher, right? And she looked like she was 40, but I guess she was like 60 or something. And that's fucking old, dude. And I mean, I've had older teachers, obviously, but that's still pretty old. So it's like her time's come to retire. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I noticed that she would get mad over these things. And I remember like one time I was outside with my friends, and we were like jumping off of walls because like we were into parkour at that time, so we were like jumping off the walls, and she was getting mad. She's like, "No, no, no, this is not what we should be doing. This is not at all what this is, for." And then when she walks away, I lean over to my friend. I'm like, "Man, Mrs. Z can be a bitch sometimes." And he leans back over to me, and he says, "What was your first clue?" And I'm like, "Yep, so Mrs. Z was, she was like she was a tolerable lady, like she was never too terrible. She was just a little strict sometimes about the stupidest shit. But overall, she was a nice lady. I'd give her like a level one maybe on like the mean teachers list. All right, now uh, this next teacher wasn't really a teacher. It was like an ed tech because I got ADHD and I need some help here and there, right? And this ed tech was also a bitch. I'm gonna say that about probably all the people here, but I'm gonna put her like right below Miss D because well she just wouldn't get off my dick. That's all. And I'll say that because this person, Miss D, was wait, am I calling her? You know, I don't even remember what I was gonna call her. Miss D, you know, Miss D number two. We'll call her Miss D. No, it's not. No, Miss B. We'll call her Miss B. Fucking sake. Okay, so Miss B, you know, and she's my ed tech, right? And it was like a really weird year. So like, it's like everyone's like in the same class. So Miss B was always in the same class with me. And eventually, like, I noticed that she's beginning to become like a little strict and unreasonable. And I really noticed that when it was like she was consistently telling me to like take my hood off because you know, like apparently hoods and hats aren't allowed in the middle school, which is fucking retarded. Um, but you know, I'm not gonna complain because I'm not there anymore. But so she would always do that, and that'd piss me off. And because I had anxiety, and the hood made me kind of comfortable, you know, like so it just made me feel like, you know, kind of like, oh, I'm in my own little space, no one really notices me, which isn't really the best way to be, you know, like people really don't judge you as much as you think, which is just sort of like, you know, that's just something to put out there. So I always had my hood on, and it was like this and that, and I noticed like more in the year, like near the end, Miss B would like nag me for the stupidest shit. And like for example, like I would lean over, like down on my desk. Well, this part really pissed me off. And she would like lean down on my desk. Like no, I would lean down on my desk. I'd be like, I wouldn't even lean. I'd be sitting up. I would just like I would have my hand like on my desk, and I'd be resting my head like on my hand. Like you know what I'm talking about, where like you have your elbow on your desk and like you have your arm pointed up and your like head is resting on your hand. I was doing that, and she'd be like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! Come on, you gotta sit up." And I'm like, "Why can't I just lean down like this?" And I remember she made the most bullshit excuse, and she's like, "Because when you're bent over like that, your lungs are like, you know, a little bit more crumpled, and you know, it's harder to think when you can't get as much oxygen in there." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So that was just like she made up bullshit excuses and stuff. And I remember one time, what else she also did was she basically just like I remember I made a paper airplane in math class because I was a seventh grader, and you know, seventh graders are immature. You know, to this day we're pretty immature still. And you know, it's a pretty common thing to do in a math class, you know, because math is fucking stupid. You know, you make a paper airplane to distract yourself, you know, throw it at your friends and shit. I remember like I went to her room next block, and the ed tech was in that room, and she comes out with the paper airplane, and she's like, "This is not how we do this. This is a waste of good paper." And I'll never forget that. I was like in eighth grade. I made a paper airplane again. The teacher was like, "What's on you?" Like, and the teacher was like, "Yeah, let's not do that." I'm like, "Is it a waste of good paper?" He's like, "No, but you know." So you know, it's just like an ongoing joke. And I remember like that really kind of set me off. And this person, like, I remember what else. She always told me to like use two hands on a calculator, which is just like, sure, it goes faster, but it's also unneeded. Like, you gotta, like, she just didn't let me bend enough. You know, you gotta let a kid relax and bend and, like, you know, take a break every once in a while. You know, like, just do something fucking stupid. You know, not too stupid, obviously, but you just gotta let him be a kid. Especially at the time it wasn't now, because that was, like, at the time that COVID was around. Like, everything was, like, fucked up classes and shit. So, you know, like, I was, you know, you gotta let a kid bend at that time. And so she like was telling me to use two hands on a calculator, and I'll never forget the joy when she's like, "How many people use two hands on a calculator?" And like one person said that they did. Everyone else used one hand, and she's like, "Really? Oh man, you guys should really use two." And I was like, "That just proves my point that you're nagging me for no fucking reason at all." And so I remember like one time, for example, like I pressed one wrong button on a calculator, and she's like, "I don't know why you're pushing random buttons." And before I could say anything, she was like, "Don't aggravate me." I'm like, "It was a fucking accident." Like I obviously didn't say that, but that's what I thought because you know an accident's an accident. You know they happen, and so that's just one thing I remember about that teacher. And that teacher was pretty shitty. I'd put Miss D on the top tier shitty teacher list because, like I said, she's a bitchy skank. Like no one liked her, and like I even told my mom, "Oh, I don't like this person." She's like, "Oh yeah, I don't like her. She's a bitch." And but you know, Miss B, you know, other people knew her and they thought she was bitchy too. I even told like one of my dad's friends, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is my teacher, and they're like, oh, is it this person? I'm like, yeah, and she's like, oh, she is a bitch, and I'm like, that made me pretty happy because I wasn't alone, like if if someone's a bitch, someone's a bitch, and you know it. But that's the three times I can remember, or like three teachers that I thought were the most bitchy. Yeah, have a nice day.